how we're doing. So, talking about and thinking about dealing with setbacks. We all have these things that become challenging in many areas of life, but might particularly happen to us with our health and fitness journey, particularly as it is not necessarily number one priority, in that other responsibilities and other things might well take precedent, and that might be the impact on workouts, nutrition, mindset and energy, particularly something we're going to talk about now in terms of bumps in the road when things aren't going 100% really well. Now, part of this for me is looking at a bit of self-reflection and a kind of an ongoing process of that, to see what's working and to see what's not working, and to see if something has, in a sense, been built into a habit that becomes easy to maintain, or it's not quite there yet, so it's easy for it to fall by the wayside if circumstances come along. Now, most people that I work with, most people that potentially would listen to this, because of that, there are bigger things, bigger priorities than exercise, gym, nutrition at times, because set goals, we want to achieve them. That's really, really good for our self-esteem, and it's good to do what we said we were going to do. It's even to ourselves, because that's what builds up confidence, builds up habits, as I say, builds up our self-esteem to keep going, as well as when the times get a bit tougher, to keep going as well, to keep it going when you're not necessarily got all the energy you could put into it, you're not necessarily got all the time, and that kind of builds up resilience to be able to keep going, which is a good thing. But sometimes things come along which mean you can't do it, and sometimes, probably as much as, maybe even more so, we have things that happen that we feel are a lot more detrimental to what we're trying to achieve than they actually are. So, taking it back a little bit, thinking about self-reflection. So for anyone that works with me directly, they will have an opportunity to do a weekly check-in, get help and support and some feedback. Now, that might be looking at the guys that work train in the gym, looking at their workouts to see how that's progressing. It might be more looking at overall factors and things that crop up. How can you help me with snacks in the evening, because it's something I struggle with. I feel like I am overeating. Is there better choices I can make? Things like, I've been going along now for the first few weeks, everything's great, but now I've got an event coming up. How do I deal with that? Now, these are good opportunities to learn some new things and have some new strategies, because I think more so than ever before, from the last 2 years plus, health and fitness in terms of staying healthy and maintaining fitness, improving immunity, has definitely, I would hope, become more of a priority rather than just how I look and what I weigh. So having strategies, things you can do to maintain health and fitness through nutrition, training, around different things, is a good thing. It's a very, very good thing, because of those factors of maintaining health, immunity, all those things, to keep going, and the knock-on effects, positive effects on mental health. Some of the fitness stuff, it's literally 2 years this week just gone. The first lockdown happened in England, UK, other parts of the world. Fitness was something that created a high level of connectivity through people joining programs, doing videos. Hannah and I did their morning coffee, keeping people connected, and it was really just a chat in the morning, and that helped with people's connectivity and helped people keep going. that was obviously a major factor in people going one of two ways, having a bit more time to actually work out at home, out for walks, build up different habits, because there wasn't the commute, there wasn't the school run, all those different things to do. At the same time, it created different pressures in that everyone's kids were at home, and that looked different for different people in terms of having to do schoolwork and things like that. And that was a bump in the road, and from that, some different things formed in terms of maybe positive things and negative things. Working with a lady now, and she said, hands up, the lockdowns, the pandemic, were a time when I did sit around, I did drink more because I wasn't going to work, easy to get up later, do my work at home, etc., etc. And that's what's got me out of shape, And that sort of honesty is really, really good in terms of taking responsibility for what's happened, and taking responsibility for bumps in the road can be a good thing, but also we need to look a little bit deeper than that. Now, things like unplanned meals out, particularly now in this post-lockdown, easing of restrictions time, take it as a positive, but in a different way. That means you have been able to probably go out with friends or family or something like that, and enjoy that time for what it is. We don't always constantly have to be doing everything 100%, but at the same time, some of us, I count myself as someone like this, need to be doing all the things, or we don't do any of the things. So it's getting to a place of understanding why that is. Where along my life journey did I become all or nothing? What are the factors that influence that? And what things have I put in place in the past that have been successful? What can I put in place now? And what can't be the same because of different work, different life stage, kids being a different age, all those sorts of things. So for me, how I trained even 5-6 years ago, because of my work at the time, because of age of the kids, the flexibility or the kind of routine that was it, what did that allow compared to now? So it's those sorts of things, and being able to adapt from that and go, actually, do you know what? I can't do all that. What can I do? Back on the kind of on and off track type of mentality. As I say, it's reframing these things into a different positive, and then looking at actually how negative has that been towards, for instance, my nutrition goal. So if we think about it logically, if you're in a calorie deficit 7 days a week, taking away that deficit 1 or 2 days, all it's going to mean is actually the potential for fat loss, weight loss that week is just that little bit lower, but it's still there because a 300, 400, 500 calorie deficit per day, add that across the week, that's it's a good amount of a deficit. It's quite a high amount of a deficit. Take it in that mid ground, so 2,100 at the lowest end. You take that away, you're still probably in a calorie deficit of around about 1,600, because maybe on one day you've had that time where you've had that unplanned meal out or whatever. Then the potential is still there for some fat loss, some change. And the other factor is, without it being a negative, you're being mindful of that, and actually you probably potentially tighten up. The difficulty might come being an all or nothing type of person when it kind of takes you off track that little bit more, and that's when you have to reflect and look a bit deeper and say, actually, why does that happen? And there's a physiological response and a psychological response. Physiologically, it's particularly if you have been focusing on being in a deficit, working really hard on your nutrition, maybe you have potentially being too restrictive in the sense of I am being good in inverted commas. This is what I eat. Or no, I don't eat that, and I haven't eaten that. I've had something completely different. Something that is tasty. Potentially sugary or whatever it is, and that's created a different cascade of responses inside your body and in your brain, and it's easy to want that, particularly when you've been working a calorie deficit, so you've been taking in less energy. You give your body more energy, and it's gone, great, give me some more of that. And it's understanding that's what's happening, that it is not just a mind response, not just something that you have not been able to control mentally, that physiologically something is happening as well. And it's more thinking about actually, how do I get back on track? How do I navigate this in the future, rather than just taking it as a complete washout and, in a sense, not even reflecting on it. For me personally, I find it really easy to overeat. And I look at that as this kind of, I was growing up in the 80s. So my parents are children of the wartime generation. So this is kind of going back, in a sense, quite a way. We're literally 30 years on from this. But then my parents were in their late 20s, 30s then. So their parents were actually in the war. Food was scarce. There was rationing, all that sort of thing. Coming out of that, there was that mentality still of definitely no wastage, high appreciation of even having food. Things like there was no imports, exports for a long time, and my grandparents would have had things like bananas and oranges coming back to being available again. So that my parents were parented with the mentality of, this is the food, you eat what you're given, you eat all of it, and we generally parent how we've been parented until we kind of start to look at things in a different way, and maybe get into that bit more reflection, which we might do for ourselves with health and fitness. But it's good to do in lots of areas of life. Why do we do something? Why do we think something? Why do we say things? Why do we say to kids, don't do that? Actually, if you analyse it, is it necessarily a bad thing? And are we just saying it because that's what was said to us and how we were experienced? So back on the food thing, growing up, I'm the child of someone who was parented of, can't waste it, eat it all. This is what we've got. This is what you've been given, so you must eat it all. That then passes on, and I was a very active child, and then coming into a time where food was much more plentiful, and it's the rise of brands like McDonald's, and food is much more plentiful, choice in the supermarket, just a number of kind of brands, supermarket starts to really expand. So we've still got that mentality of eat what is in front of you, but now there's much more potential for more food to be in front of you. So if you go right back, looking at that, it's easy to go, well, I've always been used to eating plenty of food. So I built that link up of, there's a bit left, I'll finish it, that sort of thing. And it's getting into that depth of why we do things. We need to really kind of reflect at times, and then also reflect on the other things. Why do we think something is bad? And that is probably more to do with a lot of kind of messaging around food and messaging through these days through social media, but your articles in your magazines, all your things like that, and thinking, actually take a step back. If something in a small amount as an isolated meal, isolated choice isn't overall bad. If you continue to make that same choice, then there's longer term going to be much more detrimental to our potential health, depending on what you're eating, and the goals that you've set yourself. But that one-off time, with the other benefits that are probably associated with it, socializing, interaction, family, friendship, all that sort of thing, is not intrinsically bad at all. It's just our response to it after that, and whether we can go, okay, that's done, moving on, not focusing too much on, oh, now I need to eat so much less, or now I need to exercise so much more. Just that's it, full stop. Let's go back into that routine again. And the kind of speed of transition and the thought process and understanding that there's physiological things going on as well as psychological connections in the brain, and we're thinking about repurposing, refocusing, reworking connections of association to create new habits, create new thought processes. That is also going to take time, and it's some of it comes down to recognizing, reflecting, not beating ourselves up about it, and going, you know what, this has been like this for most of the people I work with since for 20 odd years. You know, a lot of these things would build up in kind of childhood, teenage years, and then we are now 15, 20, 30 years even along from that, and look at where's it come from? What's this happened? You know, where's this kind of good bad association for food come from? Was that right? Maybe look at the fact that excess salt is not a good thing. So way too much salt. But salt was kind of demonized, I think, through the 90s as being the driver of many diseases, and because it had been added into lots of food, processed food, to preserve it, also taste it, etc. I don't think the factor that was really going on was a lot of the time was that, again, food was then becoming much more abundant, easy to overeat, fast food on the kind of high street, easy to just stop off wherever you are, grab something, eat it, probably still go home, probably still have the more structured meal times and things like that. So people just started overeating, and probably the early signs of generally overall people body weight going up, obesity started, that sort of thing. And you know, I'm not going to say this categorically, was that the kind of tipping point for some diseases that we now would say actually most of those are due to health, overall intake of too many calories, full stop. At the same time, as food becomes more abundant and people are eating more, then the number of manual jobs is coming down, and people are doing much more office-based sedentary, sat-down jobs as well. So intake's going up and activities going down just generally in day-to-day life. And a factor is there is more salt in food that people are now choosing to eat. Was it the food, or was it the salt, or was it just the overall calories? That is just one example of what has truly happened for people to draw a conclusion and then say that's what's bad. Our bodies are really good at processing salt in terms of we take it in, as long as we're hydrated, we process it out again, any excess. So more than likely it's other factors. Was it the saturated fats, the type of oils being used, the total overall calories? Because again, actually, you can have a high fat intake in terms of within your nutrition and your calories, and it still not be detrimental overall to your health if it's within the actual calorie energy needs. So it's looking at where these thoughts have come from, how does it apply to yourself, health and nutrition overall, health and fitness overall, and going, actually, if I stick into these principles and understand myself and where my thought processes are coming from, then can I work with it, still build these things in, and continue on my journey, making positive progress forward. And on that, sometimes there will be times when you might have to say no to something, or you have to keep that bit of extra discipline because actually this particular one is this particular thing, cake in office on a Friday, it's there every week. Is it a trigger at the moment? Do I need to continue? Do I need to work on some more stuff for myself before I go, actually, I can have that one bit of cake and that's it? And, if it's something that's regular like that, work it into your calorie intake. That's absolutely fine. In terms of if something is going to be fairly regularly there, add it in, enjoy it for what it is, and factor it in, move on, go on to the next thing. So bit of forward planning, bit of understanding yourself, bit of reflection, and taking these setbacks and going, actually, really, is that a setback, or is this just realistic? Is this just real life? And I need to have those strategies to work around it. As always, then, any help or support with anything that I've just talked about, you can send me a message through social media or mark@mwfitness.net. And always there to help and support in any way that I can. Thank you for listening to the Always Moving Forward podcast. You can find more information about MW Fitness at www.mwfitness.net, and all our links to social media are there too.